This episode is brought to you by Granola, Brevo, Shopify, and Fabric by Gerber Life. If you're in back-to-back meetings and want to stay focused while getting clear, structured notes, try Granola. You can try it totally free for 3 months. Just head to granola.ai/Kwame. That's granola.ai/Kwame to get your time back. If you're looking to level up your marketing, check out Brevo. Get started today or use code ANYTHING50 to save 50% on starter and standard plans for the first 3 months of an annual subscription. Just head to www.brevo.com/anything to take your marketing further with Brevo and Aura. Ready to launch or grow your business? Start with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/Kwame. And finally, if you are a parent thinking about protecting your family's financial future, check out Fabric by Gerber Life. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/Kwame. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Today's show is sponsored by strawberry.me. Let me ask you something. Are you truly where you want to be in your career? Or are you waking up every day knowing that you're capable of more, but you're just not sure how to bridge that gap? Most successful people that I know, the ones that lead at the highest levels, don't figure it out in a vacuum. They have mentors and coaches guiding them. I've always said that the most important negotiation you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. And for me, one of the toughest self-negotiations that I had to have was unlearning the belief that I could do it all by myself. Early on in my journey, I thought that I had to have all the answers, but I quickly realized that the fastest way to hit a ceiling is to work in isolation. It wasn't until I sought out mentors and professional coaching that I actually learned how to articulate my value and navigate the high-stakes pivots that got me where I am today. And that's why I'm such a believer in what Strawberry.me career coaching is doing. They're removing the guesswork and giving you a direct line to that same level of expertise. What I love about this service is that it gives you the clarity, strategy, and accountability that you need to turn your professional goals into reality. Whether you're trying to land a new job, advance in your current role, or transition into a completely new field, having expert guidance is a game changer. Instead of relying on guesswork or just waiting for the right time, professional coaching helps you to take control of your career trajectory. You'll identify the obstacles holding you back and develop a step-by-step plan that'll help you to move forward with total confidence. It's time to stop waiting. Go to strawberry.me/Kwame and get 50% off your first coaching session. That's strawberry.me/Kwame. It's like therapy, but for your career. Welcome to this negotiation masterclass edition of Negotiate Anything. With over 1,600 episodes featuring some of the world's brightest minds, we've carefully curated 3 powerful conversations for you. What makes this so special is that you'll hear how different experts from different industries approach the same challenge in their own unique ways. Our goal is to give you multiple perspectives so you can build your own unique style. Success doesn't look the same for everyone, and in this masterclass, you will see exactly why. Let's dive in. Adam, thanks for joining us today.
It's my honor and privilege. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, you stole my words. I was going to say it's my honor and privilege, my friend. So thank you for that. And how would you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm Adam Glinsky. I'm a professor at Columbia Business School. I am also an author of a new book coming out called Inspire, and I am a social scientist researcher.
Can you tell the listeners a little bit about both books, because I love the first one, but I know we're here to talk more about the second one, but I think there's a bit of a nexus too.
Yeah, the first book was called Friend and Foe, and it was really about this idea that we can understand all of human nature by appreciating that there is this constant tension between being a friend and a foe, right? Now, fast forward 10 years later, this new book has actually kind of a subtle complementary angle to it, which is I've been asking tens of thousands of people across the globe a very simple set of questions. And what I've done is I've analyzed these tens of thousands of examples, and I've come to 3 epiphanies or fundamental insights about human nature. And the first, and that gets back a little bit to the friend and foe idea, is that the inspiring person and the infuriating person are mirror images of each other. So just to give you 2 examples, the inspiring person is courageous, right? The infuriating person is cowardly. The inspiring person is generous, right? They share credit with others, right? The infuriating person steals credit and takes credit for everything. And so we can start to see that there is kind of this continuum between being inspiring and infuriating. The second insight is that this continuum is made up of 3 universal factors. There's not a single inspiring an infuriating characteristic that's not mentioned on every continent and every country in the world. Now, what are those three universal factors? They are being visionary, which is how we see the world. They are being an exemplar of desired behavior, how we are in the world. And they are being an inspiring mentor, which is how we interact with others in the world. Now, the reason why these are the three universal factors of inspiring leadership or inspiring people is because each one satisfies a fundamental human need. So being visionary satisfies the fundamental human need for meaning and understanding. Being an exemplar satisfies the fundamental human need for feeling a sense of protection, but also energy and passion. And then being a mentor, really fulfills the fundamental human need of feeling like I belong and I'm respected by other people. And then the third insight is maybe the single most important one, which is because there is a universal set of inspiring characteristics, those can be learned, they can be developed, they can be practiced, they can be nurtured so that we can become more inspiring. We are not born as inspiring or infuriating individuals. It is our current behavior that inspires and infuriates. So that has two really dramatic implications. First of all is we never achieve perfection or inspiring apotheosis. Inspiring leaders aren't born because they're made, because we can learn. We can always become more inspiring tomorrow than we were today.
Incredible. And Adam, one of the things I love about the way that you write is that you can take something that is very kind of scary and intimidating, the concept of leadership, and then you can take all of this robust research and then you can synthesize it into something so simple without it becoming simplistic and also empowering and encouraging. Because at the end of it, we can understand not only what we need to do, but also have the belief that we can do it. That's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and it's funny because, I talk about being visionary as one of these three universal factors. I mean, what does it mean to be visionary? Well, there's three components. The first one is that it is a big picture, optimistic view of the future. The second thing is that we can take that big picture, optimistic view of the future, and we can simplify it into its essence, but also visualize it. And then the third thing is that we have to share and repeat it. Repetition becomes really important. And one of my favorite examples of what I mean by simplifying and visualizing something is imagine. And so what research has shown, Drew Carton of Wharton has shown this, that when you use that more visual language, people become more engaged, more motivated, more inspired. And so hopefully that's what I try to do in my writing, is to have a big picture, optimistic view of the future that I simplified so people could process it and try to write it in a compelling and engaging way.
And Adam, when I think about this, and I think about the listeners out there, so can you speak to the everyday leader who might not think through this lens and help them to understand the value of it?
What leadership really about is, are people looking up to you and paying attention to your behavior, right? So oftentimes when we're in a position of authority, people are paying attention to us because we have power and they want to make sure that they get the outcomes they want. So they have to pay close attention to us. But even when we respect someone or look up to them, their words have a great impact on us. So I coined a phrase, and it's the opening chapter of the book, called the leader amplification effect, right? And the leader amplification effect is that anytime that people are paying attention to you, and from psychology, we know that when people pay attention to something, it amplifies its impact and intensifies the reactions that we have to that. I could have called it maybe the leader intensification effect too, right? And so the idea is that when people are attending to your behavior and your behavior matters to them, because they respect you or because you have power, whatever you say and do really, really impacts people. So one of the things that I tell people, this is a slightly different variation of your question, right? Which is most people don't think of them as inspiration, but most people don't even recognize that they're in a position of leadership itself. And leadership just comes whenever someone looks up to you, whenever someone's paying attention to your behavior and your behavior matters to them. We have a powerful choice on whether we use that attention for good or bad, right? And so one of the things that I teach people is I say, if you want to inspire people, praise them for things that are praiseworthy. So what I mean by that is like, be specific, be calibrated, right? But when you see someone do something good, let them know. That's how you can spread the seeds of inspiration, is look for ways to have a positive impact by elevating other people.
Adam, there's so much to explore here. I think one thing is just recognizing that we have more power than we realize. And a lot of times, even if we don't think of ourselves as a traditional leader, or we might not have high-ranking authority within an organization, if people look up to us, we are a leader. And that might just be one person or two people, but that still matters. And so we have that power that can be scary. But then if we see the other side, we can see there's a massive opportunity to create really lasting positive impacts on other people. Another thing to recognize is that there are a lot of times we have this black and white thinking when it comes to the modality of communication. Okay, in person is the best all the time, or whatever it happens to be. But we recognize that depending on the circumstances, there are instances where one modality is better than another. And this is a fantastic example of when, hey, text, email, something that can be documented and savored is more effective for these psychological purposes. And it actually brings us closer together by using that asynchronous modality. That's really powerful. And then just lastly, again, circling back to the very beginning, it does not take much for us to do this. Let's really hammer home why it's so important to have this fundamental understanding of inspiration and the power of positivity in relationships.
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the things I said earlier is that being visionary, really satisfies the fundamental need for meaning and understanding. Being exemplar satisfies the need for that sense of protection, right? And then being a mentor is that fundamental needs for belonging and feeling respected by people out in the world. And we can transform people's lives. Now, we also need to attend to our own experiences. So people feel insecurity, they become what we call stingier, right? They become stingy in sharing credit. They want to put blame on other people. They become defensive, right? And so one of the things that makes us understand is how can we feel more secure ourselves so that we can be more inspiring, infuriating, but we can also make other people be more inspiring by attending to their insecurities and helping assuage them, right, out that. So if I say, what I've shown in my research is, and I call them this, little tyrants, and that the people that are most likely to be a little tyrant are people that have control over some important resources, so they have power, but they are not respected by others. So two classic roles in the world would be someone who processes reimbursements in an organization, right? They really control this important thing, your money, but they're often not high-level administrators, or like a bouncer at a club, right? They control this really valuable resource, entry into this club, but they're not very well respected. But one of the reasons why we dislike these people so much is they actually treat us badly, because what I've shown in my research is that when we have low status, we feel disrespected and that makes us angry. But because we control that resource, we can act out against other people. So one of the best things we can do is make that person feel respected. So showing people, solving their insecurities, showing them respect is such a powerful, powerful motive for people. And we can be more inspired ourselves when we find ways to feel more secure ourselves.
This is fascinating because we have two things that I want to explore here first. First thing is the power of self-work. And then the second thing is the misconception of persuasion versus manipulation. So when it comes to the self-work, we're recognizing that our insecurities, if we don't do anything about them, if we don't work to build ourselves up and address these challenges, it is going to manifest into problems not only for ourselves, but to other people as well. And then on the other side too, there are some people who listen and they might say, Adam, I'm vibing with this. I agree with everything that you're saying, but there's a part of me that does not feel comfortable doing this because isn't this manipulation? Isn't it a situation where I'm just doing this to get what I want? Isn't there something icky about that? Can you speak to that fear that some people have when it comes to persuasion?
Yeah, I'll say, let me answer the second question first about persuasion as inspiration versus manipulation, right? That's sort of one way that you could think about it. And I think that there's something different between, I like to say that you can be strategic and authentic at the same time. And here's what I mean by that is that I can strategically always try to find this person at Northwestern a snow globe, but I can also be authentic in connecting it to her and talking about why I picked this particular snow globe and why I thought she would particularly like this particular snow globe. And I learned the best way to get love is to give love. Right. And so I can see why some people would see it as manipulative, but I think there's a difference between being strategic and being manipulative or seeing the bigger picture. Right. I know that when I reach out to others in an inspiring way, they're going to reach out to me in an inspiring way. So you could say it's all, it's like Phoebe on Friends when she wanted to have true altruism and realized that every time she did something for someone else, she felt good about it. She wanted to just feel bad about it, and that would be altruistic. It's like we are, as humans, want other people to be happy. And it gave me joy, true, genuine, authentic joy, that I made this person at Northwestern's life a little better by bringing her a snow globe. And I was also happy that I got my reimbursements expedited too. Now, I want to go back to, the first part of your question. How do we solve our own insecurities? So I just said that to you. It's like we can solve other people's insecurities, but we can solve our own. And I want to just tell you about 2 techniques that I've used that have been incredibly powerful. So let's take the insecurity of losing your job. There's one of the 5 biggest stressors in the world is being unemployed. Increases depression, anxiety, even suicide rates, right? Makes people feel dislocated from the world, right? We worked with a Swiss employment agency. So in Switzerland, when you get employed, to get any unemployment benefits, you have to go to an employment agency in person. And we did a little experiment. And this is something that we require every MBA student to do at Columbia when they, in the first week, get their MBA. But we asked people to reflect on their values. And we said, we want you to reflect on your values, pick 4 to 5 values that are most important to you, but also put them into a hierarchy. Like, which one's the most important value to you? And how do these other ones sort of animate from that most important one? And think about, how have you demonstrated your values in your life in the last, few weeks or so? Like, give an example where you demonstrate that values, and, think about why they matter to you so much. 2 months later, the people that have been randomly assigned to get this values reflection task were twice as likely to be employed. And the effect was so powerful that we had to end the experiment and give everyone the values reflection task, the values interventions. There's something incredibly powerful. We can solve our insecurities by reflecting on our values. Here's the second way that we can resolve our insecurities. We can resolve our insecurities by thinking about times when, in a particular context, we felt powerful, in control, our best self, etc. Now, I created an intervention about thinking about times when we felt powerful and in control. And I've shown in my research that it makes people more confident. It makes them feel more authentic. It helps them take appropriate risks. And even it physiologically calms them down. Like some researchers had used this technique I created in Europe and measured physiological reactivity before giving a speech, a stressful event, and showed that. And you've probably heard of something called the power pose, right? And there's a lot of debate in the scientific literature whether the power pose has scientific validity. And a lot of people feel it doesn't. And the reason why I think that this kind of powerful, in control reflection has greater evidence of scientific validity than power posing is because we're tapping into our own authentic experiences and we're building off something that we did right in the past rather than just trying to hold a pose, right? Which may feel awkward for some people. And so those 2 reflections, thinking about your values, how you've demonstrated them, why they mattered, or thinking about, let's say, a time when you did this task and you were in control and you were the best version of yourself on this task. Both of those solve our deep insecurities and make us more inspiring.
It's amazing. And Adam, again, going back to what we talked about at the beginning, this is all doable stuff. I love how you've been able to operationalize overcoming our insecurities too, because you've really diminished the excuse of what it takes to overcome insecurities. Because when we think about it, it's something that's big and scary that we've been dealing with for a long time. We might overestimate the amount of work that it takes to start chipping away. It will take a lot of work, but you're recognizing that there are things that you can do today to start chipping away at those insecurities. And I love that we're essentially, would it be fair to say this is a positive priming type of exercise that we're doing? Yeah.
That's the exact word, is priming. And I think, one thing I want to stress though is that, and this is really important, is you want to find out what works authentically for you, right? And there's different things that work. And I'll just mention, the experience. I gave this TED talk at New York TEDx, and it was going disastrously. I was doing practice talks and they weren't going well. And here was the problem. I cannot memorize a script. That's just not who I am as a person. And so this is what I did. Instead of having a script under each slide, I had 1 or 2 words that would activate for what I wanted to say. So I just needed those 2 words to and then I could say it in a spontaneous way that worked for me. Same thing with mantras, right? It's like, I always love in Tin Cup when Kevin Costner says dollar bill before he swings, or Ted Lasso, right? Barbecue sauce right before he throws the dart, or at another point in the movie. So, part of it is, what's the thing that works for you? And that's the thing that really matters.
That is so good. To me, it's sparking a whole different conversation for a whole different podcast interview with you, but I know you're busy on this book tour. Adam, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. And before you go, can you please remind the listeners again about the work you do and the book you're promoting right now?
Sure. I'm Adam Glinsky. I'm a social scientist at Columbia Business School, and I have a book called Inspire, The Universal Path for Leading Yourself and Others. Another subheading we almost had was the universal path for transforming yourself and others. And I'll just say one thing about the book. We talked about some people don't recognize that they're leaders, right? But here's the thing about the book. Everything in the book will help you be a better parent, a more inspiring parent, a less infuriating parent, a better spouse, a more inspiring colleague, a more inspiring friend, a more inspiring person when your flight gets canceled, right? And so what you're going to discover is that when you put inspiring energy out there, you will receive inspiring energy back, and your life is going to be better, and the life of everyone around you is also going to be better.
Amazing. Adam, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my honor, my privilege.
That was the first part of today's masterclass. Up next, we'll hear from another expert with a different approach, giving you even more strategies to add to your toolkit. Let's keep it rolling. Starting something new isn't just hard, it is terrifying. I remember when I first launched this podcast and built the American Negotiation Institute, I had all of the same what-ifs running through my head. What if no one listens? What if no one buys? What if I fail publicly? And when you start something, you're betting on yourself, and that doubt can be loud. But choosing to make that leap was one of the best decisions I've ever made. And I'll tell you this, it helps when you have the right partner behind you. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses all around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the United States, from brands just getting started to some of the biggest names out there. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you to build a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. And it's packed with powerful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography, helping you to move faster and work smarter. You can create email and social media campaigns to find your customers wherever they're scrolling. Plus, everything lives in one place: inventory, payments, analytics, making your life easier and your business operations smoother. It's time to turn those what-ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/Kwame. Go to shopify.com/Kwame. That is shopify.com/Kwame. As a self-employed business owner, my family depends on me. I think a lot about how I'm going to provide for them, how I'm going to build the business, and how I'm going to support Whitney and the boys. But I had a moment recently where I asked myself a harder question. If something unexpected happened to me, would my family be okay financially? And that's why I got serious about term life insurance and why I looked into Fabric by Gerber Life. Fabric by Gerber Life is term life insurance you can get done today, and it's made for busy parents, all online, on your schedule, right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes with no health exam required. If you have kids, and especially if you're young and healthy, now is the time to lock in low rates. And even if you already have life insurance through your employer, it might not be enough to fully protect your family, and it probably won't follow you if you leave your job. Fabric has flexible, high-quality policies that fit your family and your budget. We're talking $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/Kwame. That's meetfabric.com/Kwame. MEET fabric.com/Kwame. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, Jade, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kwame. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, it's great having you. And it is great to have you in person. It's really cool. So Jade, how about you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So, Jay Davis, I'm Vice President of External Affairs at the Port of Cleveland. And I oversee our government affairs, communications, marketing, energy projects, offshore wind, ES&G projects at the Port of Cleveland, and then also our philanthropic giving. And so that ranges from everything from, small micro grants and things like that to, 6-figure grants that we give to organizations and communities around the Cleveland area that are working to improve quality of life. Prior to the port, I worked in K Street in DC. And for those who aren't familiar with, public policy and government, I was a lobbyist in the electric utilities industry. And then also prior to that, I during my time where I worked in the same atmosphere as Kwame at the Ohio State House and Public Utilities Commission when we were both younger. I have been at the nexus of public policy, business, and politics for my entire career. And, just recently finished at Harvard Business School. And I'm an alum there now and focus a little bit more on my leadership and organizational development aspect of my business school journey. And I feel that it rounded out my career preparation for this point as I go into this, sort of halftime of the career right now.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is great. And so listeners, you can see why I want to have Jade on the podcast. Just an incredible depth of experience too. This is great. This is great. So I think the focus of this episode is going to be on how to get to yes, essentially how to persuade as a leader. And so when you think about your approach to leading and managing and moving people from one position to another position with your communication style, what would you say is your ultimate goal in every conversation?
I would say, depending on what the what role I play within this negotiation, it is to get to yes, especially if I am managing up and I'm talking to my CEO and we're trying to figure out what to do. He may have a different opinion, or he or she may have a different opinion, and I am trying to figure out how do I maintain my role, autonomy, and all those kind of things while still making sure that I'm delivering what's needed. When I'm managing laterally or, subordinates, it's making sure that they're experiencing me as a leader, as a colleague, in a way that leaves them feeling heard, transparent, and what is needed. That they have direction, that is actual direction, and that they feel whole from the interaction, and that I could be vulnerable enough to convey what it is that I really need to get done, what the vision really is for this task, and being vulnerable enough to receive things and be able to pivot if needed. Sometimes you're just wrong. and that's just the key, and that's just something that I've seen for a lot of people that could be the hardest part of their professional journey, of just being told, like, well, you're not the brightest, you're not the smartest, you don't know everything about all these intricate things. Just being in leadership and things like that, a lot of this for me was forged. And when dealing and working throughout, my early career, learning to lead by being willing to be a teammate first really helped me become to take the next step in my leadership journey. What I had to realize too, in my own right, like, it was good, it was great, it was I had traversed pretty well by my mid-30s and had hit all the markers, as far as titles, pay, autonomy, all these kind of things. And I found myself thinking, like, okay, what's next? And if I can't see what's next, why? And I remember my wife sat me down and was like, well, maybe you're not ready for it. Until you realize that what got you here isn't going to get you to the next level. And I'm like, what did you say? Like, well, what got you here was good. Like, it was great. But what's going to get you to the next level is development of something else. For me, that development was making sure that I could lead and I could be a teammate in a very authentic and vulnerable way that allowed people to really understand, like, what my motivations are.
This is great. I think one of the interesting things that I loved about this was you talking about the conversation with Crystal, your wife, because one of the things you mentioned before was managing egos. When you're managing up, when you're talking to the CEO of your company, you have to manage that ego. But in that conversation, she had to manage your ego, and it took time too, because she planted the seed in a conversation, and then a few months later, she revisited that conversation and challenged you again. And the thing that led to that massive leap in your career was accepting that, being more humble, and then recognizing that even though you are great at what you do, the next iteration of your career is going to be about leadership and the connection that you have with other people and the ability to motivate, inspire, and persuade other people. And so your ability to kind of check your ego in that moment is what led to the growth that allowed you to be a better leader.
You captured it even better than what I just said it. Throughout the early part of your career, you're very much like the folks that really progress quickly are the doers, are the executors, are the people who get like I had a couple areas where I was a subject matter expert and I was able to go and do it, and I was consistent, reliable in those things, and it allowed me to get other opportunities and to progress. That's very different from executive leadership, to where you're not doing as much as you are facilitating information to, whether it be your board or whether it be investors or whether it be other colleagues in the various trade groups and things like that. And you're facilitating that kind of communication to them internally and externally within your folks, and you're managing processes. You're sitting down every day, probably a couple times a day, dealing with, okay, what is this division doing? What can we continue to do better? These are questions you're asking now. And you still have doers who are going to be future leaders, who are going to be sitting in that seat someday, who are executing those things and getting those and hitting those KPIs, or trying to figure out why they're not, and adjusting and things like that. What we sometimes fail to do is that when I had got into leadership position, I was coming out of a doer mind frame. And so I'm leading as a doer, and I'm leading people who are also doers. And I'm saying, okay, let's get this done. Like, we got to hell or high water. Let's get this done. Let's get these things done. This is how we got to work. This is how we got to do it. And it's like, well, I'm not quite sure. And a lot of organizations and individuals, and me included, had a hard time, for about a year and a half or so of my career, thinking like, well, and it was when I realized, with the help of Crystal, that, well, your role is different. It's still about getting to the goal, but your role in getting to that goal is very different now. And those things, are the things that really help organizations take that next leap or maintain being a well-oiled machine. And that's why, small organizations don't struggle with it as much, because you can see it. When you get larger and larger, it becomes harder and harder to spot, because, success is great. Everybody wants to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Just like my CEO has a very different role than I do as well. And if you go and just plot me or one of my other, colleagues in the VP level into that seat, if we don't realize that, probably going to be in that seat long. But everyone else suffers as well within the organization.
Absolutely. And I've heard it described as the leadership lid. Like, a team cannot, or it's very difficult to outperform the quality of the leader. And so your team will grow and advance as you, as the leader, grow and advance. And one of the things that you mentioned there was understanding your role and your role relative to other people. Because even though you're going to be authentic through all of your conversations, your approach is going to change based on who it is that you're talking to. What's your role? What's their role? What's the interaction of the role?
Yeah.
So how do you maintain your authenticity in these conversations, even though you might adjust your strategy based on who it is you're talking to?
One of the main things about maintaining authenticity is just having a real curiosity about who people are, how they got there, where is it that they want to go? So it's not a single person that's going to be on a team that I lead that I'm not going to try to find out, like, what is your goal? What do you want to do? How did you get to here? And those things will tell you a lot. And so the one thing I'm trying to do is make sure that if I'm talking with folks on my team, where is it that you've been? Where is it that you want to go? What's the thing that gives you the best joy? And some of that is whether it's a consultant or that's external or that's working with you or internal employee. Sometimes you can develop your best talent within the organization and other places right under you by saying, hey, okay, if you really want to go to law school, I really want you to sit down with our legal counsel and begin to map out what that looks like. And when we're doing policy papers, I really want you to focus in on, where do you think we may have issues at in regulation or in legal and things like that, and then be that liaison. And you gain loyalty, you gain respect, but you also gain a sort of ease of working within the organization, and where people are okay now to admit, like, okay, you know what, I may have not delivered on that. I may have been wrong.
This is good. So let's go back to early in your career when you were utilizing that curiosity yourself, because what you're finding, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this, Jade, you're finding that even though you had a very clear perspective on what your value add would be, focusing on urban affairs, when you started to have those conversations with other people, you started to realize that you could still fulfill your life's goal, your mission, and all of those things while still being interested in the trades, in energy, and those types of things, right? And so you were able to make a minor tweak, but still it was in alignment with your overall goal, right?
To be honest with you, you only know what you've been exposed to.
Yeah.
You only know what is relative to your experience. And so when especially if you're like me, you're a first generation college student, you get out of college, you work a little bit, go to grad school, you get, okay, now I got this job. I am like an adult now. And it's like, okay, I know these things. I'm going to go do these things. And it's like, well, have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about that? And part of that is because I had leaders who were willing to have those conversations with me. And I was able to produce very good work and have very good relationships I still have now. But the key is I didn't even know that's what I needed until it was given to me. And I don't know if my experience would have been as fruitful for me or the organization or them if they weren't those kind of leaders. And so I admit that being as fortunate of having that. What I try to do is make sure, people feel fortunate for having the opportunity to engage with me on that level. Now, again, I'm not saying that I'm the leadership guru, and I know that firsthand, being able to provide people space to grow. And that's where you see it now in job markets. Everything has to adapt, and you can't adapt until you're actually sitting down and figuring out, what are you adapting to? And that's something that I'm trying to make sure I continue to do, whether it's entrepreneurially, whether it's professionally, within our organization.
Yeah. No, this is good. This is good because it kind of goes back to what you said about vulnerability too. Because for everybody in the conversation, there's a benefit to vulnerability. Because if you're vulnerable, now you're feeling safe enough and trust the other person enough to actually share forthrightly the information that people need to solve problems. And so it takes a strong relationship with the people on your team for them to be vulnerable enough to share that information with you, especially if you're their leader. But oftentimes we as leaders have to set the stage by being vulnerable. Like you said, admitting sometimes when we're wrong and sharing our goals and our vision very clearly so they can see where they fit into it.
Yeah, and it's one thing that I wish I would have developed very early on in the career. Heck, even in college, of just having to be in a vulnerability, hey, and people could laugh about it. But I know if we go pull out those college IDs from the early 2000s, it'd be the same thing for many of you folks. But I didn't think there was a space and a place for that. And so one thing that I'm talking with my nieces and nephews about, I always have, is like, hey, continue to network, but don't just network just to get to know folks, like get to know who they are.
Are you ready to take your business's marketing to the next level? Meet Brevo, the all-in-one marketing and CRM platform built to help you connect with customers, boost engagement, and grow your business smarter. With Brevo, you can manage all of your customer interactions in one place, nurture leads with their built-in CRM, and reach your audience through email and SMS, and keep them coming back with powerful automations. But here's where it gets really exciting. Meet Aura, Brevo's AI assistant. Aura helps you craft smarter campaigns by suggesting personalized content, optimizing send times, and even analyzing performance data to help you improve your strategy in real time. It's like having a marketing expert on your team 24/7. And of course, Brevo offers advanced analytics, seamless integrations, and AI-driven personalization. Everything you need to craft multi-channel campaigns that hit the mark every single time. Get started for free today or use code ANYTHING50 to save 50% on starter and standard plans for the first 3 months of an annual subscription. So just head to www.brevo.com/anything and take your marketing further with Brevo and Aura. If you're leading a lot of meetings, or if you're in meetings back-to-back all day, you know how mentally demanding that can be. You're trying to stay present, you're contributing, you're thinking strategically, but part of your brain is also tracking action items, decisions, and follow-ups. That's why our team uses Granola. Granola is an AI-powered notepad built for the way real people actually meet. Here's how it works. You take rough notes like you normally would, and in the background, Granola securely transcribes the meeting, and when it ends, it turns everything into clean, structured notes that are actually useful. And what I appreciate the most is that it works through your device's audio. It integrates seamlessly into the video conferencing tools that you already use, and there's no complicated setup. It just fits into your workflow. Granola doesn't replace you in the meeting, it augments you. It lets you lean in, focus, and listen deeply while still walking away knowing exactly what was deciding, who owns what, and what comes next. Before Granola, our team would spend extra time cleaning up notes and double-checking details. Now, we leave meetings aligned and clear. It saved us time and helped us to operate at a much higher level. If meetings are eating up your day, Granola is a no-brainer. You can actually try it completely free for 3 months. Just head to granola.ai/Kwame. That's granola.ai/Kwame to get your time back. Get 3 months free at granola.ai/Kwame.
That is something you have to sort of learn, because I'm not quite sure that it's something you may have to unlearn, of not connecting with people, because I'm not quite sure that's something that's being taught. It's not going to be taught in school to connect with people on that kind of level. And for a lot of families, us included as parents, you're trying to make sure your kids are very set on being the best versions of them. And, connecting with other folks on a deeper level is very much like not a top tier issue when you're raising them. And so that's something I think that the connection piece is just critical. And I'm not saying, sit down and tell folks, your darkest, deepest secrets or nothing like that. What I am saying is that being open to having a conversation about, I see myself in your position one day. How do I get there? And don't take it as a threat, but take it as, okay, this is an opportunity to develop the next wave of leadership. And I'm a firm believer that the more people you develop and the more people that you help along the way, it can be very, very beneficial to you in your journey as well. The more allies you have, because that person may not take your position at your organization, but they may go take a similar position at another organization, which then you can partner up with, or you can leave and go to, and, have all these kind of things.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And being open, it's much easier said than done. And like you said,
much.
You have to unlearn that previous, I would say a lot of times it's self-preservation, because we see the risk of sharing. And like you said, you're not always sharing your deepest, darkest secrets, but you do recognize like, hey, if I open myself up, there is some kind of danger if they take it the wrong way. But you have to take those small incremental risks. And I think about them almost like relationship tests.
Yeah.
Can I trust you with this? Oh, you passed the test. I can trust you with a little bit more. And then as you keep on doing that, you deepen the relationship. And then those difficult conversations that we talk about all the time on the podcast become a whole lot easier because people are sharing information and genuinely working together to try to solve the problem, make things better.
Yeah. And I think, and when you talk about vulnerability, I mean, some of it is just being honest with folks. Like, I don't have the answers here. This is sort of outside of my previous experience. I may have to go back and do some more reading. There's all these kind of things that are going on within the everyday of a project. Those are all things that I think are necessary, though, because you just can't do it alone. As good as we think we are, you just can't do it alone. And I don't want to take NBA analogies to real life, but oftentimes you look at all these like championship dynasties and things like that. There's probably a lot of stars. There's probably a lot of people that could be CEO. There's probably a lot of people that can do those things within that organization. But the organization is someplace worth being. That's what you need. A lot of people that are willing that can step up if need be.
Exactly. And to that point too, even if you could do it all by yourself, you wouldn't want to because it would be exhausting and unpleasant.
Yeah. Would you enjoy it? Would you have enough left to enjoy it, to see it? Those are all kind of things, I think those things are, look at the Apple journey, look at the Microsoft journey. I mean, the talented, bright people were involved with all of this from, for years and decades. And not everybody was, Steve Jobs or, Bill Gates. But there was a lot of people who could have been, who were involved with this. And some of them left and went and did other great things. Some of them stayed and did great things. Some of them went and did low key things that were critical. When you start talking about other algorithms or other smaller companies and tech companies and things like that, I think there's a lot of things that we see. We had, some senior folks leave over the last few years who have went on and done great things at our organization. And again, it all gets down to being willing to have that conversation, being willing to listen, and being open to, what's possible. Yeah. It's hard. Sometimes we want to know. I know it. I can do it. Trust me, I know. But it's almost always not the way to do it.
Right. Exactly. Well, Jade, really appreciate it, man. This is really great. I feel like I could just keep on going. And I know that because we talked for like an hour before we started.
Yeah, definitely.
But before we go, can you let the listeners know again about where you are now, your public relations company, and how they can get in touch?
Thornton Buckeye Group. You can check out ThorntonBuckeyeGroup.com. So that's THORNTON Buckeye, BUCKEYE Group, GROUP.com, or you can email CDavis, letter C, DAVIS, Davis at ThorntonBuckeyeGroup.com. And so it's I'm really proud of my wife. My wife is a dynamic professional in her own right, vice president of Alliance to Great Lakes. She really is the one driving Thornton Buckeye Group from a day to day, with a couple of our, key staff and consultants. And to see her as a African-American woman, young woman, take on this and with such vigor. And, it's been great to see. I'm just glad I can be able to help. I'm glad I can be able to step in. And 10 years ago we said I do. So it's been great. And check it out if for your public affairs needs, Thornton Buckeye Group.
Love it. Yeah, man. I tell you one thing I respect. You've always been incredibly good at getting all stars on your team, and Crystal's a great example. Yeah. Definitely. So this is great, man. Really appreciate it.
Go to the top, man. I want to go to the top.
That's right. Appreciate it, brother. Thanks
Appreciate
for coming
it.
on.
Thank you. Bye.
You've just heard one powerful perspective, and now we're moving on to the next, a fresh voice with a new angle on the same challenge, so you can keep expanding your skills. Let's dive in. So today we're talking to President Jim Tressel, the president of Youngstown State University and the former coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. So for those of you that don't know him, let me tell you a little bit about President Tressel. Tressel is essentially Ohio royalty. He was one of the most successful coaches in NCAA history. 229 career wins, 9 national title game appearances, 6 Big Ten titles, 9 bowl appearances, and national championships in 91, 93, 94, 97, and 2002 with the Buckeyes. Under President Tressel's leadership, enrollment increased for the first time in 5 years, and the university attracted its most academically accomplished freshman class ever. In addition, the university revamped its development operations and hit record fundraising levels, announced its first Rhodes Scholar recipient, reconfigured its executive leadership organization, froze tuition for 2 consecutive years, and expanded its scholarship offerings. The reason I wanted to bring President Tressel onto the show is to teach us about the keys to persuasive leadership. He has a great book on the topic of leadership called The Winner's Manual, and he's been incredibly successful as a coach and a university administrator, and I know we can learn a lot from his experience. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview. Thank you so much for joining us today, President Tressel. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So can you start us off by telling us a little bit about your leadership philosophy?
Yeah, I've grown over the years to have an interest in studying what leadership is and what leadership does and how one can grow in their ability to be a leader. And I've come to the conclusion that many people think leadership is a position that you hold. And I think the first thing that you have to grow to understand that leadership is not a position, but leadership is an action that you take to serve others. And so leadership as service really has been the focus of what I believe about leadership.
So as you were studying leadership and getting better yourself, what were some resources that you used to improve your skills?
I really tried to read about people that I thought had done a great job of serving. I read constantly about coaches who had been highly successful, both with their one-loss record, if you will, but also their impact on their students. I liked to go and hear people speak about what they thought leadership was, starting to craft what I thought were the takeaways from their lives. So I think reading and listening are critical components to developing your knowledge base and your beliefs in what leadership is all about.
So for you, as a successful coach and now as a successful president, do you think it's more the X's and O's of either as a coach, what happens on the football field, or as a president, the intricacies of the various departments? Do you think that leads to more success, or do you think it's really those leadership skills that you've honed over the years that has led to your consistent success?
Yeah, I would say the latter. We always felt that the depth in which we could serve our students, interestingly enough, it many times equated into more success on the field. The harder we worked to develop the individual and help them grow in all the phases of their life, it was not coincidental that they also became the best at playing their position or doing their role within a team. So I think it's important to have the accountability of developing the competencies of what you're trying to teach within your, in our case, it was our team, or here at the university, competencies of whatever department, whatever discipline a faculty member might be teaching in or whatever. That's critical. The accountability of doing your job is very important. But I think the thing that takes you to the next level is helping someone, serving someone to grow in all of the phases of their life that they deem important.
Yeah, I agree. That's phenomenal. And I feel like a lot of times people miss that because they act too strategically and fail to really invest in the people. So I'm glad to hear that you said that. And I'm sure the audience is getting a lot out of that too. In your position, I know you've had the opportunity to work with a lot of elite people. And that's one of the things I'm sure that led to your success. But along with that, people who are used to being top dog often have big egos. So how have you managed dealing with people with big egos and getting them on board to your agenda?
I think one of the things, Kwame, that you need to work extremely hard on is helping people keep things in perspective and helping people understand that they individually are insignificant without every single other person around them, regardless of their role or their notoriety. And so helping people keep perspective, I think, has really been a mainstay, and yourself included. Sometimes as the leader, the head coach, the president, whatever, sometimes you can lose perspective about your relative importance and forget about the fact that every single person that's a part of the organization or the team or the university or whatever, every single one of their roles is important, and they as humans are important. And I have found that at times it can be more difficult with that person of high notoriety or high ego or whatever, because throughout their lives, everyone has, kind of patted them on the back and told them they're wonderful and all those kinds of things. And if that's the bulk of the messaging you're getting, as humans, sometimes we believe it. And not to say that they're not important and they're not wonderful, but to keep in mind that, none of us are wonderful without everyone else.
Right.
Hello, my friends. Before we get back to today's episode, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever wondered how to elevate your team's negotiation game and how you can help the folks on your team have better, difficult conversations? At the American Negotiation Institute, we offer transformative keynotes and workshops tailored to empower professionals with top-tier negotiation and conflict resolution skills. Whether it's a keynote for your next event or hands-on training for your team, we've got you covered. Don't just negotiate. Master the art with the American Negotiation Institute. Click the link in the description to find out more. Elevate, negotiate, and succeed.
So for you, as a leader of the university and also, of course, as the leader of the Buckeyes, as the coach, you've reached some national levels of significance. And so how have you been able to maintain your humility in a way that still allows you to lead your team in an effective way?
I don't know if there's a trick to maintaining humility. You have to believe that you are just one of the cogs in the wheel. I don't think that you can believe that you're something special and then develop humility. I think that you have to have the confidence that what you add to the overall group is important. There's no question about that. But it's really irrelevant without everyone else. And like anything else, to teach someone something, the first thing that has to get in place is they have to believe it. It's one thing to say, that you need to be humble or that you need to appreciate others or respect others, be aware of others, be compassionate to others. It's one thing to say that we should do that. It's another thing to say that we believe that. And so it's a conversation that I think has to be constant, and you have to, in your own life, live it, because you can't ask someone to be something that you are not trying hard to be and believe deeply in. So I think having the constant reminders and the constant message that, hey, this whole existence we have is bigger than ourselves. And my experience has been we couldn't have a great team until we realized that it was bigger than simply what being good would bring to us. And it had to be much bigger than that. And that's part of the fun of trying to create a good working group together. Because let's face it, the media likes to single out wonderful performances, or they like to hype individuals, but you, with your group, need to make sure that while we know that the outside world is going to say, well, the only reason we were good was because of our Rhodes Scholar here last year or our great quarterback 10 years ago or whatever, we all know that whatever it was we were able to accomplish was because everyone was important.
Right. Yeah, this is deep because, like I said, I know you're dealing with big egos, and this is something I think would really help our audience too. Can you take us a little bit deeper into these conversations? So what do they look like? So let's say hypothetically, if we have somebody who is a coach, an assistant coach, but is coming from an all-star role as a head coach somewhere else, and they're used to doing things their way. So how would you approach that conversation to persuade them to see themselves as another cog in the wheel?
Well, I've always believed that the first thing that you have to do is try to get a handle on what the person's thinking. I've always, whether it was my students or my colleagues, have always wanted to know where they were coming from. what their thoughts were, what they thought was important, what their ideas were, as opposed to just giving them their marching orders or their list of expectations. I always found that it's been helpful to get in a dialogue so that how people feel and what they think is what they think. And I don't think you can be afraid of having those open discussions. And I think a couple good things can happen from that. Number one, you can get some ideas that you didn't have. So I've always gotten the best ideas from others. I don't think I have anything original in my life. And the other thing I think you can do when you can have that dialogue, have that conversation, get that feeling for what someone's thinking is you can help clarify sometimes a misperception they might have. I used to tease my players that, hey, I know you go back to the dorm every night and talk about what we should do. If you were in charge of what you would do, tell me what that is, because I might get a great idea from it, and maybe we should be doing that, or I might be able to help you understand why we're doing this. And I think once people understand why we're doing what we're doing and have input into what we're doing, feel a part of that, my experience has been that you have a chance to build a commonness, a common cause. Now, it's a lot easier with a small group. You know, I used to have 100 players and a dozen coaches, and creating and having those dialogues and so forth is much easier than 13,000 students and 2,000 employees. Still, I think it's really the same thing. It's getting a feel for what people are thinking, what they believe, what their ideas are, and having that interaction, you know, to try to help grow as a group with anyone's idea. It doesn't matter whose idea it was, but also help people have a little bit more of an understanding of why we're proceeding the way we are. And then I guess the other thing I would say is not ever being afraid to say, hey, you know what, the way we were proceeding might not have been the best way. We've learned something, so maybe we need to do this or that.
This is great advice, and I'm running into a little bit of a problem here because I'm running out of space on this piece of paper from taking all these notes. This is really good. One of the things that I really find interesting from this is that I think people have a misconception when it comes to leadership, that the leader stands on high and just barks instructions to their team and the team follows. But this is really interesting to me to hear how much the team's input matters and how much you take the time to listen to the coaches and the players to essentially be willing to be persuaded yourself in order to show your buy-in to the process as well.
Well, one of the phrases, and I don't know where I heard it or if I even heard it or if I made it up or whatever, I'm not sure, but I used to tell my people all the time that if you're interested in being able to influence in a positive way, then you first have to be influenceable, because folks don't want to know just what you think. They want you to know what they think and feel as if there be an open dialogue. Now, we're all tied to constraints. You know, we can't have an hour discussion in between every play in a game. We only have 25 seconds. So there obviously has to be a lot of lead-up discussion as to how we're going to go forward. We are going to have to make decisions at times when you have to make decisions. But what's critical, I think, is that willingness to evaluate the decisions you made in a collective manner and talk about the rationale and at times say, you know what, we should have taken so-and-so's idea. Ours wasn't the best idea. We thought it was at the time, but it may not have been, so that's our chance to improve. And so it's not a short process, because there are moments when you have to bark orders. You know, when there's a deadline due and decision has to be made and game has to be played or a decision has to be made, it has to be made. Hopefully there's been a lot gone into how you get to that point, and just as much put into how you're going to evaluate those ongoing decisions that you have to make.
Right. Wow, this is really, really good stuff. So it sounds like earlier in the conversation we were talking about humility, having that humility within yourself, and then now it's almost like vulnerability, being willing to admit mistakes and let other people in. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think you have to create an environment, again, which isn't easy, but you can't have people fearful of their own vulnerability. If you take someone's idea and then it ended up not being the best thing, and then all of a sudden you can't say, well, man, you messed this up. We don't need your input anymore, because then you're going to get limited input if there's that sense. We used to talk a lot as a staff about the fact that we were going to spend hours and hours and hours and argue and everything else. But then when we come up with a plan, we're going to go out and we're going to do the plan, and then we're going to come back in and evaluate it, and we're not going to keep a scorecard of whose idea worked and whose didn't, and I can't believe, took your idea and we'll never listen to you again, because if people are worried about that, they're not likely to tell you what they're thinking. So it's an exhausting, ongoing, difficult in this day and age, because everyone wants immediate results. But I think if you're going to build something long-term that can be quality, you're going to have to understand that there's going to be ups and downs. And even when there's ups, you better still evaluate what's next, because just because you won yesterday doesn't mean someone's not going to figure out a way to beat you tomorrow. So there has to be that openness and willingness to put yourself out there.
Right. So with these conversations that you're having, when you're getting ready to maybe persuade somebody or have these kind of high-level conversations, how do you find yourself preparing for those? Is there a process that you use, or do you just go into it and go by your gut? How does that work for you?
I think there's two phases of that. One is if you're doing long-term planning, then I think you have some time to request significant input. And I like to use surveys, and I like to use focus groups, and I like to create frequencies of what someone's thinking and so forth. Then there's also the ones that are a little bit more rapid, in that sometimes you have to get a decision today, and you don't have the ability to do a survey and have a long conversation and discussion and have a consensus building time and an exhaustive process. So when I prepare for those strategic things and those things that are really going to help us shape long-term planning, I like to get as much information and then talk it through, whether it be individually sometimes or collectively with small groups. Then there's other times, where it's tough to prepare because you don't have, something new popped into the situation, a decision, something you weren't expecting or counting on or whatever, but yet there's a deadline looming. You might not have as much ability for as much input as you would like, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I like the idea of, with long-term planning, using surveys and focus groups, because, again, it goes back to your style of gathering input from other people when you're making decisions. So that I appreciate that consistency there. That's impressive. One other thing I wanted to ask you about was conflict. And so as a leader, of course, there are going to be instances where we have to deal with conflict and difficult conversations. How do you approach those? Is there a different approach from the way you would approach just typical high-level conversations?
It's funny because you're never without those. And I think they sometimes depend upon how long you've been together. And I think the more you know one another and the more consistency and stability you've had together, they can happen more frequently. And sometimes when you're just in the beginning stages of creating those relationships, creating that trust, creating that openness and willingness to be vulnerable and not being guarded and all those things, it's harder. And so depending upon how long you're together, I think determines how you handle the conflict. I think at the beginning, you're just trying to figure one another out. And there has to be a time when that trust develops. And if it doesn't get there, I'm not sure you're ever going to get there. And then the conflicts might get solved unilaterally. But if you really can develop that relationship and that trust, and there's so many things. We're only in our third year here at Youngstown State in a much larger environment than just a small team. So many more personalities, so many more opinions, so much more history. And until you really can grow to know one another, conflict is hard. And I'm not pretending that, we've got the answer to it, because time is so critical. And I don't know if you can have a great relationship that's short-term, just because we're all human. Hopefully, conflict, the longer you've been together, you can just be very transparent and open and know that's where the person's coming from. Sometimes when you're just getting to know one another, people aren't as willing and open to be as transparent as you need to be in that resolution.
So what steps do you take to build trust with those around you?
Oh, boy, other than exhaustive time spent together, I don't have a quick fix for it. I think in anything, trust gets developed a little bit more when you have a little proof. When you come into a situation and you're trying to create that tight group, you're just going on a little bit of blind faith, and that's blind faith is not that strong. I think the longer you're together and you have a little proof of how working together and being willing to be open with one another, and I think you have to be a keen observer and a keen listener. Well, that doesn't happen overnight. Many times when you go into a new situation, the first time you sit with someone, they're going to try to get their point across, their thoughts, their wants, their needs, and see if they can quickly convince you of their that they've got a handle on what we need to do. But then so is the next person and the next person and the next person. But until you've assimilated all that information, made some decisions, tested the waters, played some games, whatever, and when I mean games, I mean contests, not tricky games, had some results, it's hard to get the total togetherness. And that's why in sports we always talk about, where was your breakthrough win, where all of a sudden everyone said, you know what, we are heading in the right direction. And I am going to be more open and more faithful in believing in the total cause. And, in this highly competitive, especially in higher ed, challenging environment, it's hard to have those breakthrough wins. And everyone looks at a win a little bit differently. It was easy in football. We had a game. But, in a larger sense, you don't have as simple a breakthrough opportunity to develop that trust, which will then lead you to be able to be more effective in conflict resolution and so forth.
That's really interesting. I was really hoping you would give some kind of quick tip, but there really isn't any easy way to do it.
Nope, there really isn't.
And it seems as though the key to this is consistency. So you show up and you act in accordance to your values. You act with integrity, and you do that consistently over time, and that's the type of action that builds trust with the person. Is that right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, I think it's really important that you do and are who you said you would be, because I think all of us have been tricked and all of us have been misled. And so I think it's really critical. If you say you're going to do something, if you say you're going to listen, then you have to listen. If you say you're going to communicate, you have to communicate. The problem is there's only 24 hours in the day, and that's why it takes time.
Right. This is good. This is good information. But I know you have other things to do, so I'm going to wrap this up quickly. One of the things that I've seen about you and heard about you is that you are a strong believer in habits. And so can you share a few of the habits that you believe have led to your success?
I think one of the key habits is, despite, the difficulties that everyone faces in whatever arena they're in, the hardships you face and whatever, I think you have to have the habit of being grateful for the opportunities, grateful for one another, grateful for the simple freedoms we enjoy in this country. And so often we get caught up in our hardships versus our blessings. And the habit, we used to always tell our guys, you can't be happy and ungrateful at the same time. It's impossible. And you have to either be grateful, and happy, or ungrateful and unhappy, because they can't coexist.
Wow. That is good. That is good. It's funny. I remember, I've heard this before, and I remember trying to set the habit of writing 5 things every morning that I'm grateful for. And I remember seeing a marked difference in my attitude throughout the day on the days that I did do it versus the days that I didn't do it.
Yep.
Did I do it consistently? No. I have no idea why, but I'm glad that you said that, because now I'm going to make a concerted effort to get back to that.
Well, and, you can't beat yourself up. It's like anything else. It's like when you make the New Year's resolution and I'm going to lose 10 pounds and I'm only going to eat lettuce and I'm going to do this and that, and then you do it for a couple of days and you fall off the wagon and then you beat yourself up for it. You've got to understand that if you do make that decision that I'm going to be grateful, every day I'm going to write 5 things down and so forth. And if you do that some of the time, that's going to help you. if you don't do it all the time and you beat yourself up, it's not going to help you. So you have to be, a little bit realistic and forgiving of yourself at times, knowing, though, that the more you do it, the better you'll be.
I appreciate that. That is very good to hear. Because for me, I have that habit. One habit I do have consistently, it's a bad habit, is beating myself up when I don't reach these high standards. So, but right. Like you say, it's counterproductive.
Yep.
Good deal. So before you go, if you could challenge our audience to do one thing in the next week to become a better leader, what would it be?
Listen.
Wow. I love that.
It doesn't mean agree. It doesn't mean do everything you hear. It means listen. And if you'll do that, then I think you'll have a better chance of serving those that you're trying to lead better. The less you listen, I think the less effective. And again, it goes back to that old, how many hours are there in the day? And technology, with email and text messages and so forth, all of a sudden it drains so much of your time and energy, and it keeps you from doing the things that you really think you need to do to be effective serving others. So the world has made it more difficult. Ironically, with the advancements in the world, it's more difficult to do the big things. It might be easier to send an email than write a letter and put a stamp and walk to the mailbox. I know that. But to do 400 emails a day, it takes away from a lot of other things that might be more impactful.
Right. Wow. This is really good stuff. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing this information.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure, and it's always fun to be asked questions like that, because every question you get asked, what goes through your mind is, I know I'm not doing what I'm telling you as well as I should. So it's a great challenge, to do what you believe in better than you've been doing it.
Wait. Now, before you sign off, I have something to tell you that I've never told you before. Just kidding, I've told you before, but you should listen to it again. I want you to know about Negotiate Anything Premium. Imagine all of the things that you love about our traditional feed, plus so much more. I know you like our traditional feed because you're at the end of the episode. And with Negotiate Anything Premium, you'll get more bonus content you've been asking for, more of the expert insights that you can't get anywhere else, and more exclusive behind-the-scenes access into every conversation. Are you ready to get more of what you want out of your life, career, and every conversation? With Negotiate Anything Premium, you'll have access to more high-level, custom-designed content and insights, giving you the tools you need to negotiate higher salaries, better deals, and better relationships in your life and career. Once I had a listener share that Negotiate Anything helped her to negotiate a $53,000 raise. Could this be you? What would that mean for your life? I've seen firsthand the impact this model has had on my life and the lives of my corporate clients, and I am confident that it can do the same for you. Are you ready to negotiate more of the best things in life? Click the link in the show notes to learn more. I'll catch you later.